let's go ahead, get into this college football playoff game, Ohio State game, Texas game, whatever you want to call it. But the Ohio State the Buckeyes, they were able to win this game 28-14. Now, despite the game not really looking as close as it was a really close game. I mean, both of the quarterbacks, they played rather well, at least up until the very end. Will Howard completed 24 of his 33 pass attempts, threw for 289 yards, threw one touchdown, as well as one bad interception. But, excuse me, aside from that, this was a great game from Ohio State, and especially their defense late in the game. Texas, Quinn Ewers ended up recording 283 passing yards, ended up recording 2 touchdowns and 1 interception as well. Arch Manning was able to get into this game, but of course he came in as a running option at the quarterback, and he rushed in for 8 yards. No more of that going into the future, because now Texas has confirmed that Archie Manning, is going to go ahead and take the Archie Manning, whatever you want to call him. He's going to go ahead and take the helm at quarterback and be the full-time starter for Texas for what I assume is going to be the next 2 years, assuming he doesn't get drafted directly after next year. But he's going to be the starting quarterback for Texas. And a lot of people, a lot of Texas fans are really excited for Arch Manning to take the helm, because of course, that is just continuing the Manning legacy of being a great quarterback and being a good quarterback around family, because that's sort of like, when you have that last name, you're expected to be a talent that's worth going to the NFL and most likely worth winning a Super Bowl with. Now, this game, it was really decided on at the very end of the game on a 4th down play, because this game was really close throughout the entire game. Again, it was 28-14. Ohio State, they opened up with a touchdown in the first quarter to make the score 7-0. Then both teams had to punt several times up until the very last play of that drive, where Texas, Texas, I guess I could call them that. The Longhorns, yeah, that's a better name. That's a better word for it. The Longhorns, they ended up scoring a touchdown late in the second quarter, but then Ohio State responded right back with a touchdown of their own to make the score 14-7 going into the second half. And now going into the second half, Ohio State, they started out with the ball, but they threw an interception, a rather costly interception. They're lucky that it did not result into any points on the other end. Texas had to punt, and then Ohio State had to punt one more time, and then the Longhorns converted on a touchdown drive to make the score 14-14 going into the fourth quarter, and the stage was set for one of the best endings in a college football game. Now, Ohio State, they opened it up with a touchdown after the Longhorns punted, but then the Longhorns responded with a rather long touchdown drive that got them into the red zone and a really good opportunity to win right here. But this was where a lot of Texas fans started to pull their hair out, because on 2nd and goal, they decided to run a toss play, which was seen as rather controversial, especially late in the game. A lot of Texas fans were wondering why on earth would the coach call that kind of play in a 2nd and goal situation, because usually to run a toss play, you're tossing the ball really far back, and there's a really good chance that if the defense is good enough, and knowing Ohio State's defense, that you'd most likely get tackled before you're able to pass the line of scrimmage. And that's exactly what happened, which caused a lot of Texas fans to get really upset, because it's like, why are you running that play on a 2nd and goal situation with the game on the line? Like, that's a lot of Texas fans were really upset at that, and that was capitalized on after Ohio State ended up on 4th and goal, getting a very big stop. And you can see in this image right here, what happens later is a strip sack fumble, which was returned all the way back 98 yards for a touchdown to make the score 28-14, or 27-14. They nailed the extra point directly after that, and that made the score 28-14 going into the fourth quarter, and late into the fourth quarter to end the game. And now the rest of the game was basically garbage time, but Quinn Ewers threw his last pass and his as a Texas Longhorn, and that was an interception, which sealed the win for Ohio State at 28-14. So again, this game was a lot closer than what the score would have you believe. Like, it really came down to a 4th and goal on the very last play of the drive before the interception. And it was this was a fantastic game, and it was really decided right after that fumble, and more so the return than like the actual fumble itself, because there was still like, a slight chance that Texas would be able to come back and at the very least tie the game, assuming that the fumble wasn't returned all the way for 6 points. But regardless, obviously that interception at the end of the game is what really sealed the win completely, but you can argue that it was already sealed once Sawyer ended up making that strip sack fumble and returning that fumble all the way for 6. And again, that is one of the best ways for a game to really conclude. Like, when game on the line, this one play completely decides the entire outcome of the game, and boom, the strip sack fumble happens. That was just, but all in all, this game was very, very impressive. I mean, it was a very strict defensive game. Ohio State, they seemed like they could do more against Texas's defense than Texas was able to do against Ohio State. One of the only times when Ohio State really messed up on defense was when they went into man coverage. At least that's sort of my opinion on it, because they started leaving receivers wide open on several plays, and the receivers just ended up making the play for a touchdown. More specifically, the receiver that I'm talking about was Jaden Blue, who ended up recording 2 touchdowns. Both of his touchdowns came on like routes where he ended up beating his man down the field, and all that was needed was a well-placed ball to put the ball in the end zone. And that's sort of what happened. I will say, however, that throughout most of the game, receivers were suffering from several drops. There were times where a receiver could have converted on 3rd down, but ended up dropping the ball. This happened a lot in the first quarter. In the first half, more so than it happened throughout the entire game. So if they would have converted on some of those catches, we might be seeing a completely different outcome. But nonetheless, that's sort of what happens when you don't capitalize on the plays that the defense gives you. Because it's not like the receivers were entirely clamped. It's not like each receiver was being guarded very, very strictly. Like, they'd have plays where they're wide open and they just could not capitalize on said plays. But Ohio State determined, and they showed that they were the team that can capitalize on big plays, and that was ultimately what ended up propelling them to win this game in the end. Being able to make the big plays and being able to capitalize on those big plays. And that's usually a recipe for success in several football programs. So that's all that I have in this second segment. So now we're going to go into the third segment where I continue talking about these wild card games and how they concluded. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned if you guys are interested.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.